Dali nakabalik. Parang a mixture of Tagalog and Bisaya, right? Ang dali-dali ko lang nakabalik. Ganun ba yun? Okay, welcome back to my YT channel. This is again Amazing Eternal Voice. Welcome back for my science world. Your YouTube content creator and a small YouTuber and your instructor by dummy. Dummy instructor, D-U-M-M-Y. Dummy. Oh my gosh, why dummy? Because it's online. You cannot physically see me in actual. I can have to distribute the papers, calculators, books. We are just doing this, in virtual platforms. It's gonna be the same like as dummy, D-U-M-M-Y, right? Meaning there's no actual appearances. Okay, like that. Oh my gosh. Okay, going back to my topic, guys. So this topic is usually ignored by those, professions that are not really related to engineering and math, something like that. Okay, especially, I think they have also practical electricity for the College of Arts and Sciences, but I'm not really that sure. Especially the profession related to teaching, right? Education, psychology, business administration, or whatever. I think they are not dealing this topic and disregard it again. But we in the engineering profession, science profession, and math profession, we really account this as important as other subjects because without this, we don't have light. Let there be light, artificial light, meaning this is done through the efforts of human being. Okay? It's gonna be like that. I'm not talking with natural light that God gave into us, the direct light by the sunlight. Our beautiful Proxima Centauri, okay, our beautiful biggest star in the planet, okay, is or in the solar system, the sun, okay, like that. Okay, would you believe that the sun is the biggest star in the solar system, and it is called, Proxima Centauri, scientific name of the sun. Okay, like that. S-U-N, okay, that sun composed of silica, silicon and oxygen. It's not the silica, it's not the silicate, but sun, S-U-N. Okay. Baka maano, kasi ano siya katulog, rhyme, right? Rhyme, R-H-Y-M-E, rhyme. The same sound. Nakalokan. Okay, electrostatic force, dami kang kuda. Electrostatic forces. Okay. Ganon. I discussed this already, right? Electrostatic forces are study of electric charge at rest. Ala, electric charge? Oh, sabi to. Okay. We should recall the electric charge chuba chuchu na Coulomb's law also. Okay, like that. So, we need to say, one electric charge, mga palangga, umitad. Okay. One electric charge is equal to 1.6027, something like that. I could not exactly memorize everything that point something, but I'm gonna show 1.602 times 10 to the negative 19 Coulomb. Okay, this is Coulomb's law constant, right? Okay. Or we can specifically say this also as electrostatic force constant. Okay, electrostatic force. There's a lot of names. So, para di mo mayabo sa for examination, you should memorize the three terms for this. Electrostatic, constant, and electric charge constant. Okay? Constant, right? And also Coulomb's constant. Or Coulomb's law constant. Basta may mga chuba-chuchu. Okay? So three terms for this. Electrostatic constant. Okay? You can add force if you want. So to make it precise, electrostatic force constant, electric charge constant. Coulomb's law constant is one electric charge is equal to 1.6027 times 10 to the negative 19 coulombs. Now, I will teach you also, guys, how many electrons in this one electric charge, even though the given is only one. How can you compute for that? Let's say, for example, this is an actual examination. You can do that in 2 minutes. In 2 minutes, calculate the electrons by just having this one given. 1.602 times the negative column. Something like that. How can you do that? Okay. How can you do that, mga palangga? Okay. So, let's say, mauna siya mga palangga. Okay. You get the point? So, one electric charge. So, algebra, right away. Algebra, ratio and proportion, right? You need to, too much, whatever you have, you're going to do. Ratio and proportion only in algebra, right? Electric charge, something like that. Okay, is equals to 1.6027 times 10 to negative yung ganun siya chuchu. Okay? Okay. Yeah, wala siya matabo. So, how many electrons? Okay, like it's one electrons. Ganon. So, in every electric charge, there must be one electron flow. Okay, because this is the normal basis of calculation. For example, just like an ideal gas, 1 mole of an ideal gas in standard condition, that's why we have that formula PV and RT. Same story here also, we need to let one electron in every electric charge to compensate our value of electric charge equal to 1.6027 times to negative 19. Sabi ko din ang mga palangga. Okay, now, like that, sa calculate ng mga palangga. Okay? Ganon. Okay, so 1 over electrons. Charot. Okay, like that. 1 over 1.602 times 10 to the negative 19. Ganon. Okay? So, you can calculate that in that way. And then, electrons is equal to 1 over 1.602 times 10 to the negative 19. I-compute daw guys, pili nga kuha ni maning gayuna. Charot. Ratio and proportion naman guys. Okay? Okay? Saan mo siya pagkuha? Charot. So, calculator is mga palangga ang kita. Okay, ako nag-try ha on the spot. I may be wrong, I may be correct. Okay, so pila mo siya mga palangga. Charot. Okay, so 1 divided by 1.6027 exponent negative 19. Oh, see? 6.24 times 10 to the 18 electrons. You got the point? Okay, ganon. Okay. So, ang inversion proportion will be like this. 1 electric charge is equals to 1.602 times the negative column. Okay, and then you will say in 1 electron, how many charge? Okay, or in 1 charge, how many electrons? Ganon. So you will say electron. Okay, ganon siya. Okay, 1 na ito i-assume niya. Electron over 1, and then 1 over 1.602 times 10 to the negative 19. Diba? Ilat mga palangga, ganon. Okay? You get the point? Ano na siya per guys ha? If you see a problem that is limited in the given, limited siya ba? For example, usara Jude, and then how can I do this? Like this, so you need to account the algebra mathematics, ratio and proportion, something like that, so that you can easily determine the answer, and you can treat always basis of calculation. You get the point? Like the basis of calculation, normally talaga siya may analyze siya guys. 1 mole, 1 meter distance, like that. I think you can get what I want to emphasize. Nakakaloka. Okay, ganon. Okay? So, muna siya. Nag-assume ng tanawan ng charge. Okay? You get the point mga palangga. So, let's also try to make this theoretically. Okay, because I assume for 1 electrons is equal to 1, right? So, if you will say also by using the charge also, the real charge, electron also has a charge of 1, but negative lang talaga siya. Okay? Aside from no way, we need to do the ratio proportion. But the only difference also, because electron has a charge of negative, so we can supposedly put here negative, right? But why in our ratio proportion, we don't carry that, we drop out the negative, something like that. Okay, so So there's a little bit of confusion if we use the charge really of electron which is negative 1. You got the point mga palangga. Okay. Since it will be also justified because an electron is negative. Okay? But you know, story like this is not yet relevant. It's not really relevant because even though you include the negative in your ratio and proportion, you can also get an electron which is negative, which electron is negative. So I think for me, 1 and 1 is just the same. Say, example in ratio proportion, electron over negative 1, right? And then 1 electric charge is over to the column, ganon. And then your answer will be electron is negative something. Ito, negative 6.228 like this. Okay? Like this. Times 10 to the, what's that mga palangga? 18. Then, you need to drop the negative because these electrons are negative in nature. You don't put negative on the number. You get the point. You will just say 6.28 times the 18 electrons. Because these electrons are already negative. You don't need to put negative on the 6.2. You get the point. It's just the same. Whether you say negative one in your ratio and proportion. Because admittedly, technically, and scientifically, the charge of electron is negative 1. You get the point mga palangga. Okay? Ganon. Okay? You get the point mga palangga. Umitad. Okay, ganon. Okay. So, muna yung may tabo. 6.28 times 10 to the 18 electrons. So, i-memorize na lang na siya guys para dali. Okay. Actually, ako na nag-memorize. Okay. Okay, but ako na siya i-discuss in discussion para for the purpose of discussion. Okay. So, in this topic, we already memorized that 1 electric charge is equal to 1.602 times 10 to the negative 19 column. And also, in that conversion, we have electrons of 6.24 times 10 to the 18 electrons. These are all the electrons found in 1 electric charge. Imagine, in just only 1 electric charge, there is 6.24 times 10 to the 18 electrons. Imagine how many electrons will flow in the wire if you produce electricity. Just only that for electric charge, only 1 only. Okay? So, how much more in your cable, electrical cable? How much? So, I think there are trillions of electrons there because in only 1 electric charge, there is 6.24 times 10 to the 18. And 18, what is that? That's too huge. You know, 18 after, that's after tera, theta, that's exa on the prefixes. Okay? Exa. You know, ito po mga palangga, exa column. Wow. No, that's not exa because exa is just, oh yeah, 18 talaga siya. 10 to the 18 is exa. Yes? 10 to the 15 is theta. 10 to the 12 is tera. Okay? 10 to the 9 is giga. Okay? So we have, for example, 2 gigabyte in our storage in our computer. We can also have 4, okay, exabyte. Okay? It doesn't mean that it only stops in the giga or terabyte in our storage. It will reach until 18, and that is exa. That's too huge of storage now in our computer. Exabyte. Because it is 10 to the 18. More than the gigabyte and the terabyte. Okay? After, we have also petabyte. So that's the rule of prefixes in math. We need to put that so that we can simplify to avoid putting a lot of zeros. Okay, for example, megabytes, okay, like that. Gigabytes, kilowatts, okay, megawatts, like that. At the point, to avoid putting a lot of zeros. Okay? So that's why you need to memorize the prefixes in math. Pag tungtong pa lang yun sa first year college, memorize all the prefixes. Okay? From 10 to the negative 1 to 10 to the negative 18. And also, from 10 to the 1 to the 10 to the 18, din bingo, you have namundo na kadaan sa imong board examination where you are still in first year college. You get the point? If your goal really is, if you want to become a licensed engineer in the future. Okay? Something like that. You need to have effort. Pagtungtong pa ang daan mo sa imong first year college in your university or institution. Hindi ka magkumpiyansa. Ganon! Okay? and make that as a habit in your culture to always bear in mind that you should always be in the dean's lister, something like that. Okay, you will target, I should always be in the top 5 in the dean's lister or in the top 10. So as much as possible, top 5 yun siya. Ayun siya paluping. Ganon! Okay. Nakakaloka. Grabe naman yung ako advice ni Jun magpaluping. You should be competitive. Something like that. Nakakaloka. Grabe naman. Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Chisif Kantal for watching. Shout out, Bibi and Sarah para sa kaugmaon. Charot! Okay, nakakaloka. Okay, kaugmaon, Jun. Okay, so now we go to the... Actually, guys, this topic of electrostatic forces are columns low. Right? Columns low. Ganon. Okay? Tabihan ko eh. Nakaloka. Okay. How can I seal my mouth? Okay. Oh my God. Okay, columns low. Ganon. So si columns low, a little bit of physics din siya guys, mga talaga kumitan. Okay, because there's a little movement of the electrons or flow of the electrons. So if we try to, for example guys, let's say for example, if you have, okay, we need to remember also that current, because it's related to electricity guys, okay, this part, basics of electricity, okay, so we have current is equals to the electric charge Q over the time, right? And your current could either be an ampere or shall we say a milliampere. Ampere is the basic unit of current, okay, or electricity. Now we have here the Q mga palangga is the electric charge, okay, electric charge, okay. So pala, kung ang question ulit sa in future examination will say, what is the electric charge of an electron? Blah blah blah, so and so. Then you can compute already by this conversion. Okay? So, bisan ito pala siya, ma-extract na namin because we have the conversions in our brain cells. Okay? Like that. So, we have electric charge over the time, something like that. Okay? But you know guys, the basic unit of time expressed in SI unit, okay, SI unit and metric system is gonna be second. Okay, time second is the basic unit in SI and metric, right? The distance is meter, okay, like that. And obviously the current is ampere, right? To the point. And the charge, electric charge, is coulomb, right? So these are all SI chuba or metric system. Now, we can put that here, electric charge coulomb, okay, and time S. So therefore, 1 ampere is also equal to 1 coulomb per second. Okay. Get the point? 1 ampere is equal also to 1 coulomb per second. Now, if you have a lot of particle moving in a certain, path, so let's say a wire, there's an electrons there, and you can easily compute the coulomb, blah 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 blah, so and so, because you have now the basic formula of I is equals to Q over T. I is current, okay, and T is time, and Q. So you can compute also the time it travels for the electrons to reach from point A to point B. The hour or the second delivered by one electron to another point. You can compute because there's a time in the denominator. Okay, and each electron has its charge, which is the 1.6027 times 10^19. Then bingo, we can compute for the current, and the time, and then of course in a problem solving there must be at least minimum of 1 given there, or 2. Okay, like that. So you can really solve by attaching these principles. And this is called scientific laws, right? Formulas and equations. Okay, like that. Okay, now if we have this already in our mind, we need to connect that to the physics type of electrical concepts. So we have the electrostatic force, or our formula now will be like this. Guys, basic initial guys, really it will come out in the board examination. Okay, I remember also. I could not exactly remember the data, but it's there. I think 1 or 2 or 3, something like that. So let's say electrostatic force, ganon, EF. Electrostatic force. So we need to memorize this formula because it's very basic. And then we have the Coulomb's constant, K, or the electric, as what I mentioned a while ago, electrostatic force constant, electric charge constant, or Coulomb's constant is just the same. Okay, K. So, K, ano siya? Times Q1, Q2. O mga langga, what are these Q1 and Q2? These are the charges of your particles moving in a path. Particles not limited also to electrons. Sometimes also the problems in the questions in the future, or in your exam, or whatever, related to the topic, sometimes they will use proton, like this, electron, proton. Electron only is the most basic example because this is really electricity. We are covering the electrons flow in the path, right? But sometimes they will use protons, neutrons, because these are all elementary particles inside and outside the nucleus. In the atomic structure, if you can still remember the Niels Bohr atomic theory and John Dalton atomic theory. So those are the parent theory and concepts why we arrive that we have now on Ohm's law. Okay? Voltage equals to current times resistance. Marami siyang pinaghuhugutan before it really goes to a simplified formula of electricity, which is V is equals to IR. Connected this also with electrostatic force formula. So it's gonna siya guys through correlation of theories. Correlation. Okay, we need to say you need to connect the dots like that. Where did this come from? I connect this here, like this. So dapat ang atong brain sa thousand na siya. We need to connect like this, like this. Okay, so that we extract the, we can analyze properly, even though how complex the problem really is, something like that. Okay, because it will be modified from time to time. Okay, the problems regarding to this. Okay, over R squared, mga palangga ulitan. Okay. I will quickly guys, I think last 3 days ago, okay, I encountered a problem that's using a distance picometer. Nakakaloka. See? Picometer. You got the point? Picometer. Nakakaloka. Ano ba yung picometer? So that is 10 to the negative 12 meter. Next to the nano. Oh, first nanometer, next is picometer. Right? Okay, and the other one is micrometer. These are the units of a very, very less distance because it's negative. Okay, 10 to the negative 12 pico. And then the problem also involves 160 picometer. Like this, if you don't know the prefix in Nanapuka in the future, you should memorize, as what I told you, memorize all the prefixes from 10 to the 1 to 10 to the 18, 10 to the negative 1, 10 to the 18, so that, okay, sa'yo na rin kayo pag-solve conversion to okay? Like this. Okay. Now going back to R squared. Okay. R is our distance in any units, ha? Based on our prefixes, it will be meter, centimeter, decimeter, picometer, nanometer, like this, whatever, kilometer, okay, micrometer, whatever. Okay. Now, muna siya itong distance R. Electrostatic forces, okay, naman ta? Okay. So what is the value? Okay, the value is, actually you don't have to memorize, but it's very necessary. So, dito na tayo mag-derive. Okay, like that. So, we need to have K is equals to electrostatic force constant, electric charge constant, Coulomb's law constant, is equals to 8.99 times 10 to the 9. Ganun siya, chupa-chucho, diba? Okay, we have Newton meter squared, okay, over C squared. Okay? Ganon. Okay? You get the point, mga palangga. Okay. Newton meter squared C squared. Then if you forgot the units, because the units are 2 units, so many. There's Newton, there's meter, there's coulomb. Try to take note this formula also, so that it will not be rumbled. See, compute with the K, then of course the columns will be squared in the denominator. And you only have 1 Newton, so that Newton is not squared because you have only Newton the force here. And then meter squared because the distance is being squared. That's why Newton meter squared over C squared in your memorization. You troubleshoot, you extract the formula, maybe it will be, reversed, or then you will be wrong. Even though you get already the correct value of the constant, the unit is, reversed. because you cannot cancel chuba chucho if your unit will be reversed. That's a technique in math. If the unit will not be cancelled out, then it should not, you cannot get the exact answer for that. Okay, like that. Muna siya. So, electrostatic force, okay, or the Coulomb's law equation will be electrostatic force is equals to electrostatic force constant times the electric charge Q1 and Q2 over R squared. R is the distance. I will draw. For example, you have an electron that will flow here. Electron, ganon. The electron 1 will flow to the right. For example, only for the purpose of discussion. So Q2. Oh. The electron has its own electric charge going there. And then the Q1 also electron 1 has its electric charge going there, other side. Like this. Here, we put the force. Okay? The force, electrostatic force. I put in the center because it is in the center where these two will meet. If not meet, then you don't have an net electric charge equal to zero. How come they will be polarized and neutralized if there's no net electric charge of zero? So this is the point where they meet, something like that. Okay? Good only if they will go on the other opposite, they compute. But what I'm trying to say, by theory, it should meet. Okay, because or else there's no electricity. Something like that. You get the point? So, muna siyang illustration. Okay, ganon. So, atong tibanan mga palangga, umiktad, for example, if the problem will say an electron flow to a path, blah, 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 and then there's only electron, and then there's Q1, Q2 here. What you will do, guys, you need to square that charge or the column because there is only one electron moving, blah, 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 so on. So, this is only for the purpose. There are two electrons, blah, blah, so on, so on. Be given each, then multiply each if the given is not the same. Okay? If there is only one given understood, you will try to square root that one. Okay, because the formula is 1 times Q2 and there is only electron flowing there, 1 electron, something like that, okay? And you can analyze this, you can analyze that in the problem, okay? You get the point? Mga talaga, but these are our basic equation of electrostatic forces. Ganon. Okay? This one. Okay. Muna siya. Now guys, these electrostatic forces, you can relate this also to the centripetal forces and the centrifugal forces. Okay, some of the centripetal forces. These are forces directed toward the center of the nucleus. If you are referring to an atom as your reference. But now if you are referring to another thing, for example, a solar system, so directed towards the sun, because the sun is the center of the solar system, something like that. It depends on the reference you are trying to emphasize, but you are referring to the center, something like that, okay? Central part of an object or anything that you are trying to consider. Okay, now the centrifugal force is another thing. Is the reverse of centripetal force. Okay? That is a force directed away from the central of the atom. Or directed away from the centroid of gravity. For example, if you try to consider the strength of the materials or engineering mechanics, that more on the tension, stresses, like that. And then you need to calculate, diba? Ato makapubay sa centroid of gravity. So that ang tanang forces nimo, all your forces will concentrate in the center so that it will not bend or else it will collapse, right? In engineering mechanics, engineering course have that subject. So it's in the centroid really that focuses all your forces so that it will not bend in both sides. It will break. So we need to troubleshoot on the centroid of gravity. Center. So the same here, the purpose of our discussion of centrifugal force and centrifugal force directed towards the center and directed away from the center. Away. Ang centrifugal away siya, guys. Okay? You get the point? Mana siya. Okay. So, centrifugal force and, the other was centrifugal force. Now, if you relate that in chemistry, a little physics, magkuyog mag-refer sa physics in chemistry, guys. Okay? That's why, okay, you get the point? So, if I have the electrostatic forces, I have the attractive force. Okay? Attractive force, basic kayo ng mga malangga, giniskas kami siya sa high school. I think, third year high school. Attractive force and repulsive force. Okay? Repulsive force. Ganon. Now, if you are dealing with molecules, the terminology is different. If you're dealing with object only, for example, Sotero pushed the chair from point 1 to point 2. Ganon. Okay, what is the attractive force delivered by Mr. Sotero at a distance of 2 meters apart? Ganon, yung na-cover sa pag-push sa chair. So, I need to get my force attractive, not the repulsive. So, there's a difference, okay? Because directed away, towards. Okay, like that. So, this attractive force is a force directed, towards the desired point. And this repulsive force is a force directed away from the desired point. Okay, if you try that to connect with the centripetal force, our centripetal force is the attractive force. Okay? Centripetal force. Our repulsive force is the centrifugal force. Okay? That's why we have centrifugal pump. Because the centrifugal pump, the force is directed away from the center when it performs, the task of being a pump. The term is centrifugal because the term here is coming from centrifugal. It's circular motion, okay, like that, and then covering also an angular momentum. If you can remember the angular momentum and the same time angular velocity, of course. If there's an angular velocity, there's also angular momentum. And then the force you're covering that in your centrifugal pump, motor pump, is centrifugal force, not centripetal. Okay? You get the point. And then these attractive forces, another thing also, aside from being centrifugal force, this is also known as the intermolecular forces. Intermolecular forces or intermolecular attractive forces. Okay? And this repulsive forces also intermolecular, okay, repulsive forces. Okay? I put intermolecular if our bases are molecules. Okay? In chemistry, compound that apply to objects, no need to put intermolecular. Okay? Like that. But in gases, of course, gas involves molecules, something like that. That's why intermolecular forces. Okay. Intermolecular forces of krypton gases. Compute the intermolecular forces of krypton gases at an ideal state condition. Walay given. Charot. So gamitan na ng mga STP at standard temperature and pressure. Mga tik-tik sa way given is AP na yun. Basta ideal gas. Okay? You get the point? Because it looks like very strange that there's no at least one number lang siya to compute or to, to solve the problem. Sometimes wala talaga siya. Condition lang, ibutang, nakakaloka. Okay? But it's okay. We need to master that technique that's gonna be like that. It's also solvable. Wow! Solvable. Meaning it can be solved. Wow. New term yan ha? Solvable. Just like doable. It can be done. Right? Okay. English talaga, no? Okay, mga palangga ko. If we have the intermolecular repulsive forces, so technically these are the van der Waals weak forces in non-ideal gas. That's why in non-ideal gas, intermolecular forces are very important to consider. But ideal gas will never consider the intermolecular forces of the molecules. This is more difficult compared to the ideal gas, which is only PV and RT. And the ideal gas lost everything, there's a lot. Okay, Boyle's law, Newton's law, Lighter's law, pull na kayo siya, gas-gas na kayo siya. But master din ang ideal gas law by using the van der Waals equation of non-ideality, in which you consider the correction factor of the pressures. It will be interesting, guys. Okay, and volume fraction, something like that. In the intermolecular forces, all you have to do is to have wild imagination. Wow. Diba? As I told you, one of the qualities of being an engineer and scientist is to have wild imagination apart from critical thinking. Okay, something like that. You get the point? Something like mga palangga kung hitad. Okay. Now, your intermolecular repulsive forces away, ganon, is the London dispersion forces. Wow, nakakalokat. Okay? And then we have also the same as van der Waals weak forces. Okay? Ganon mga palangga. And then memorize all the type of forces ha. Okay, wala ba ni ma-discuss sa akong class of instruction naman ito mga Debye forces, cosine forces, o di ba? O di na siya ma-discuss. Imo yun siya research further. Masa na mga Debye forces? Ganon, di ba? Okay, very enjoyable talaga yung science-related course, right? If you have really passion to study very, very well. Ganon. Gatapuan mga talaga ang hitad. Ganon. Okay. Now, before I go to the problem solving, I need also to connect that with the electric field, wow, and the magnetic field. That's why we have the study of electromagnetism, okay, the law of polarity again by, Maxwell. Maxwell equation, ano nakakaloka, mga equation, dami. Maxwell equations, ganda Faraday, and Mr. Coulomb. Magkuyong ko sila pero guys sa mga electricity chuba-chucho, kanyang mga scientists, Mr. Coulomb, Mr. Faraday, and Mr. John Maxwell. Charot, mo ba? Yes, mao. Nakakaloka. Diba? Okay. Now, magsob-sob ako ta guys. Uy, diba? Kung malingaw ta. Okay. So, magsob-sob. But before that, mahatag sa kunin ninyo kuan guys, magnetic permittivity constant. Nakakaloka naman. Okay? Magnetic permittivity constant. Okay? Mag-compute mga kata sa mga electric field, then we cannot compute without this constant. Okay? Permittivity constant. Charot. Okay? Or electric, or we can say mga palangga kong hitad, that is gonna be electric field, right? Electric field permittivity constant. Wala nakakaloka. Diba? Okay. So, this not been discussed very well also in college, but through deep research, I understand very well about this. Okay, electric field permittivity constant. So I told you, if you study really, a serious engineering course, 5 years will not be enough. Okay, I think 10 years. If you try to study in detail, something like that. Okay, kasuksuukan talaga, mo siyang tukion. Okay, so electric field permittivity constant. Okay, what is the value of this constant? 8.85 times 10 to the negative 12 farad. Wow, grabe no, farad over meter. Why farad? Because this is covered by Mr. Faraday, Michael Faraday. Usually our older scientists in the past, okay, make their last name as the unit also, like Mr. Ohms, Mr. Coulomb, Mr. Faraday, something like that, and so many pa, okay, like that. Muna siya may tabo. So, atong tema na atong electrical permittivity constant. Because sometimes also guys in our electrostatic force equation, sometimes there's no given of the electrostatic force constant directly. Then we need to correlate this electric field permittivity constant so that we can get the electrostatic force constant. Things like that. Diba? Imagine, grabe ka mangtas magbuhat sa mga question. Because sometimes they will not give the constant. Mag-correlate pa kapag na yung mga constant yung magamit dito sa electrostatic force. Madali hatagdaan na dito sa problem para masolve ko na yun, di ba? But not sometimes. That's why we need to be clever enough to determine the other constant that we need to correlate so that we can have a relationship and try to plug in that particular equation, the standard equation of electrostatic force. Formula or equation. Formula. Yun talaga. Okay. Nakakaloka. Okay. Minom sa kukap ito activate coffee to activate my brain cells. Okay, mga palangga kong kita. Ganon. A little bit of physics. Oh my gosh. Nakakaloka. Diba? Alright. Coffee for life. Wow! Okay lang. Di ba? Ang sarap ng buhay. Coffee-coffee lang. Lecture-lecture. Sarap! Sarap lang. Nakakaloka. Okay, I have to end. This is really simultaneous live streamings. I use all my social media accounts. You can see there. Okay, directly. This is live na live. Si Kuya Junjun or si Tito Junjun nyo. Or Lolo Junjun. Ganon! Okay. Diba? Shout out sa mga kakampings. Pakamping kayo, in fairness. Kung nananaw na ko mga kakamping, grabe kayo mga kamping mo na comments do. Grabe kayo. Yun lang kumusulti.